Good morning. Welcome to another Fusion Bite. In this episode, we are going to handle lobbies. I'm a little bummed. I opened the project today, and I actually used it kind of as a sample for a client project. And I came back, and my playground scene was gone, so I had to kind of rebuild it. But my hats are missing, and that makes me sad. But I'm not gonna rebuild the hats. But at least my player spawns. My voice chat I think would work, but I think didn't have my microphone plugged in whenever I launched Unity, so it's not working right now, but that's okay. We're not using any of that for our lobby portion. So let's get started on how we're going to handle the lobby. So right now we're entering our name, and when we click submit, it's calling a method. So this is the button. Here's the on-click event. It's calling a method on this name entry script, which is then going to our Fusion Connection instance, and it's telling it to connect to runner, and we're giving it our name input field. So we don't want to connect to runner anymore. Instead, we need to connect to a lobby. So let's go back to this name entry thing, and let's just comment this out for now. And in Fusion Connection, there's not, we need to write a method for connecting to a lobby. So it's going to be pretty similar to what we already had here. So I don't think we need async right now. I think we can just do public void connect to lobby. And let's go ahead and feed the player name here so that we have it. And then basically we just have to go, let's grab this. We're not going to have an issue with it, but if for some reason the runner is missing, it'll create the runner. But let's do runner dot join session lobby. And you can add some other values in here. Like you can name the lobby that you want. Like you can pick a specific lobby ID if you're going to have multiple lobbies. You can set up authentication, create custom app settings, but we're just going to leave it like this. I'm not sure why it got like that. Oh, duh. Join session lobby. And why are you not happy? Oh, it's an async task to join a session lobby. So public async void. Oh, we need to have a parameter session lobbies. Oops, I paused in the middle of that. I'm going to delete that async for now. I think we do need our first parameter. Yeah, session. I had to go look at my other project because I forgot. This is the type of game mode, essentially. So you're just going to type in session lobby dot, and then we're doing shared mode here. So that's going to join the session lobby. So if we go back to our name entry one, let's just go ahead and I'm going to do that. And join connect to lobby. Is that what I called it? I said join lobby, but I guess, okay, connect to lobby. That's what I called it. All right. And so how do we know that this worked? Well, there is no callback for lobby joined, but we'll know when we join the lobby because we'll have the session list will get updated. Keep it, and remember, sessions are rooms. So if we go back and play, all right, here we are. I'm just going to submit my name. And there we go. Session list updated, so we know that we're connected to the lobby. All right, now we need a way to see what sessions there are in the lobby. So we need to create a new canvas. And I'm going to deactivate the name entry canvas. Remind me to activate that back later. So if we go to UI canvas, and I'm going to come over here and set my canvas scaler to scale with screen size. I always hate it when I forget to do that because then on builds it'll look weird. All right, and then we're going to go to UI, and we're going to create a scroll view. So this is where our lobby is going to show up at. This can be significantly bigger, so let's get this significantly bigger. Something like that. And then I'm also going to, I never use horizontal scroll bars ever. I should figure out a way to go into my Unities and edit the scroll view components to just not have horizontal scroll bars. And so since the horizontal one's gone, let's take the bottom, or let's take the vertical scroll bar and let's just make it a little bit bigger. All right, and then in our viewport, we have our content, and I don't know why this isn't there by default, but we need a content size fitter. I guess because you need a content size fitter if you're gonna be adding components to the content box, which is what we're gonna do. And then vertical fit, we're gonna set for preferred size. So now that we have our scroll view, we need to have what our room list entries will look like. And we're going to make prefabs for that. So I'm going to come in here. And I could use an empty object, but I like using a panel so I can kind of see what it's going to look like. Oh, something else we need on the content is we need a vertical layout group. And I think I'm going to do this upper center. And I'm not going to control child size. So my panel right now is 0, 0, 0. So I'm just going to see what's the width of my scroll view. Let's make it 1050 by 780, just so it's doesn't have a lot of extra points. 1050 and height. Let's see what 100 looks like. All right, so there it is there. Let's make it a different color just to make it easier to see. I don't know, an orange. Okay. So right now it's there up at the top. And let's just add some padding on the top, just a wee bit there. 15 pixels or whatever, units, whatever it's measuring there, looks good. And yeah, so this is going to be our session entry prefab. I always call it room entry, but they're sessions. And on our session entry prefab, we want to add a horizontal layout group. And I'm going to align these middle center, and I'm not going to expand any of that. And so now I'm going to create a Text Mesh Pro. And this is going to be the room name. And my rooms always look something like this. And you know what? Maybe I will have it go ahead and control the width. There we go. And let's put some padding on the left. Let's make it 30. Cool. And then on the room name, I'm going to make sure that it's centered vertically. Great. All right, so now we have room name. I'm just going to duplicate that. And this is going to be player count. So this will be something like that. And then we need a button. Okay, and so let's make that a little bit bigger. And then on the horizontal, let's put some right padding. Something like that. And let's look at our button. This is going to be our join button. And I'm just going to go join. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Fantastic. And one thing that's useful for things like buttons is you're going to be using buttons throughout your whole game, throughout your whole app. And you kind of want your UI to look the same. So early on, once it's a good idea to go ahead and make a prefab for a button. Because even if you don't know what style you're going to have yet, you can just go edit that one button and it'll edit it for everything. Especially for my VR projects, I have a button prefab that has a custom script I put on it for XR haptics, and it also works on gamepad, so that's cool. And so I always have that on my button, and so when I'm using buttons, I use that button prefab, and then if I need to change the fonts, the button sprites, whatever, I can do that later. But one thing that I always think is weird is that there's no highlighted color by default, so I like to put that just to make sure that my event manager is working. And we have our session entry prefab, essentially. I'm going to create a new folder for UI. Why not? And I'm just going to grab this session entry prefab, and I'm going to go like that. Okay, but now there's some things that we need to know on our session entry prefab. Let's go ahead and switch to 2D. So our session entry prefab, I'm going to want a script on this because it's easier then to find stuff on it. So I'm going to go to create C# script, and we're going to call this session entry prefab. Might start getting loud. The rest of my family is waking up now. It's 7:40 a.m. But we're going to continue on. So we have our session entry prefab script. We're going to drop it onto our session entry prefab. And let's go ahead and open it up. I don't know if you can hear that, but my 2-year-old is having a great time right now. All right, now it might be beneficial for me to move this over so I don't forget what's going on here. And so we actually want to store each of these little bits because we're going to reference them later. We want to make it nice and easy for ourselves. So we're going to be using the TextMesh Pro namespace. So that is using TMP Pro. And then up here, we're going to have public TextMesh Pro UGUI. So this is the one here. This one here is the one in 3D space, and this is the one on UI. All right, I got interrupted there for a second. UGUI, and this is going to be the room name. And then really we could also, a little trick here, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. We can also put a comma, and I can have one for player count, saves a little line there. And then I want a public button, which this is going to need to use Unity Engine.UI namespace. So I'm just going to double click and it added it for me. And this is going to be the join button. You know, this is bothering me. I actually don't want it like that this time. So I'm going to go public text mesh pro UGUI player count. It would work just fine the other way, and sometimes I do it, but I like, for right now, I just want it like that. Okay. All right, I took a little break there. I'm back. And for now, I think that's all that we need. Well, one more thing we can do is create a listener for the join button. So on awake, we can do join button dot on click dot add listener. I wish it would. I always forget how to do the listener. I think it's just like this. Yeah. And so let's just call it join session. All right. And then it's mad because we don't have that method. So if we do that, it is now happy. And now we need a method on our connection manager. Where'd it go? All right, let's close all but this. And apparently we don't have it open. Oh, but I have my Solution Explorer open in Visual Studio, so I can just come up here, look at my scripts. There's my Fusion connection. And we have connect to runner. So we're going to continue to use the connect to runner. We're not going to use that bit. So we're going to get rid of that because, and so we'll go ahead and, we're not using the connect on awake anyways. Connect to lobby, player name. So we want to store player name as player name up here in the connect to lobby method we did. Now we're still going to have connect to runner. But what this is going to need to know now is it's going to need to know the session name. And that's where we come here and we say session name. All right. And right now I have this set up for a 2-player room. That's fine. And if we go to our session entry prefab, now we should be able to do Fusion Manager. Oh, no, Fusion Connection. I'm not sure why I named it that way this time. I always call it Fusion Manager. And then this is Connect to Runner, which I probably would kind of want to rename that to Connect to Session. It's just, that's what we're doing. We're already technically connected to the runner. So connects to session, and then we're going to plug in the room name .text here. All right, we're making a lot of progress so far. Normally this feels like it'd be a point we'd go test what we have so far, but there's nothing to see, so we're just going to kind of keep it there for now. In case you can't tell what we're doing, is we have this session entry prefab script on our session entry prefab so that we can store the room name, the player count, and the join button, and we're going to populate those from our Fusion connection script. And we're going to do that here in just a second. But while I'm thinking about it, let's come over here and let's actually drag and drop in all these properties. So room name, player count, button. Cool. And pretty much I think the prefab's done. Ooh, there's one more thing because Unity hates its own UI system for some reason. Normally I would do this on Awake, but in another project I'm on right now, it's Awake. It doesn't really like it. So I'm going to do private void start. Maybe I'm thinking of the actual players getting instantiated and setting their positions. I'm going to put this in start, and UI just, it's so finicky whenever you create it at runtime. It likes to change its scale, and it likes to change its position. So we're going to make sure it can't do that. So we're going to do transform.local scale, and see, Visual Studio 2022 knows it's a problem. We just typed in transform. It's like, oh yeah, you want to set the scale to 1. And now we're going to do transform. And look at this. Look how smart it is. It knows the problem. Visual Studio knows the problem, and it's already trying to help us solve it. I don't know why it's been graying out the awake and start methods, though. Has it always done that? Comment down below. But I feel like since it's a built-in Unity method, it shouldn't be grayed out like, why are you doing this? It's saying it's unused, but I mean, we're using it. So I don't know what its problem is with that. Maybe it's an IntelliSense setting that I don't have right. All right, so now our prefab should be officially golden. So now we're going to go to Fusion Connection, and we're going to come down to, you know what, let me collapse everything. And where's my session list? On session list updated, I'm actually going to cut this out, and I'm going to bring it up here so I can see where I'm working on it. And I'm actually going to put it right underneath this connect to lobby. So on session list updated, the first thing we want to do, and this is, you have to really decide here. So on session list updated, every single time a room is created, a player, or I should say a session is created, a player joins that session, a player leaves that session, the session properties change, the session is set to open or close, the session is set to visible or not visible. I don't know if I said if a player leaves the session, but all sorts of things that can happen in a session will call this on session list updated callback. So if you have a small game and you have a small number of users, updating the actual UI every time the list updates is probably fine. But if you start getting a lot more users and that list can be updating every microsecond, you don't want it to be clearing the list and repopulating it 1,000 times every frame. So what can we do? Well, we can set a, create a list. So let's do that. Let's create a list for our session list. So we're just going to do, it doesn't need to be public, private list session info. And it's going to be our, let's just call it sessions like it was trying to suggest to us. And then there we go. So on session list updated, and I hope I remember this right, I'm pretty sure we don't need to clear out the list. I think if we just set, well, shoot, it's easy enough to clear it. Let's go ahead and clear it. And then we'll set sessions equal to session list. So every time the session list is updated, we will have a, we'll store it as a list, but we're not going to update our UI right away. So how would we update the UI? So let's, I'm going to create a little section, session list. There we go. And we're going to have a refresh button. So let's do public button, and we got to use Unity Engine.ui, refresh button. Okay, so on session list updated, oh, I forgot, it's right up here at the top. On session list update, I'm going to start with my refresh button disabled. But on session list updated, you know what? I was thinking about making the refresh button interactable, but somebody could accidentally spam it and not realize it. So I'm not going to do that. Let's go ahead and come back over here, though, and let's take a look at our Fusion Manager. And why is my header missing? I have some sort of error. Line 34, connect to runner. Oh, because we got rid of that method. Well, I'm going to get rid of just that whole little bit because we're not going to give the option to connect on awake anymore. So I'm just going to delete all the stuff related to connect to await. And here we have our session list section now. So we need a refresh button. So let's look at our game window here. So we have our canvas, and this is going to be our room list canvas. And I'm going to create actually 2 buttons. So let's create an empty. I need to look at it in scene view though. Let's hit F to focus on it. And I actually want it to be, I'm holding Alt and Shift. I want it to be mounted down there. Whoa, zoom out. All right, so here we are looking at our canvas, and then this is going to be my little horizontal layout group for my lower buttons. So I'm going to call this lower buttons, and I'm just going to make the width, you know what, let me just get the scroll through width, 1050. All right, I'm going to make it 1050. And then on my lower buttons, I'm going to add a horizontal layout group component, and I'm going to set them middle center. I'm not going to do any of that. And then I'm going to have a UI button, Text Mesh Pro. And here, this will be our create button. And we'll have create. And what's this look like over here? Pretty tiny. So let's bump this up. And then let's bump this out. Let's go to our text. Let's bump that up. All right, so we have our create button. We'll duplicate that. And we have our refresh button. Come in here, change our text, refresh, and then let's go to our lower buttons layout group and let's space those out. Very nice. And then my refresh button, I guess I can just leave it as active there. One thing I'm going to do on my refresh button to avoid the spamming of it, which it probably wouldn't be that big a deal. But I'm going to create a script for it just to manage it to not be able to be spammed. So refresh button. All right, so let me drag it onto the button. And then let's go look at it. All right, so we're going to have private button. Yes, using the engine UI button. I guess I can call it refresh button. And then on awake, we're going to do refresh button dot on click dot add listener, and we're going to call this refresh. And then we're going to do private void refresh. Oh, you know what? I want to make this a coroutine. I wonder if I can do private enumerator. And I wonder if we can, do I put start coroutine in here? Like that? All right, we can't do it like this. So let's just do that. Private void refresh. All right, and then private enumerator refresh wait. Yield return null. And then we're going to start coroutine refresh wait. Sweet. So what we're going to do here first is I'm going to take the refresh button and make it not interactable. False. Okay. And then we need a method on our Fusion connection to actually refresh the list. So we're going to do a public void refresh session list UI. We'll make it super specific. And so now we need to actually know the session list content. So we're going to have a public transform session list content. Probably don't need to call it session list content since I have it in the session list header, but we're going to do that anyways. All right, so here in our Fusion Manager, we're looking for our session list content. We can go ahead and put our refresh button here too. So there's that, scroll view, and then there's content. And why not rename this session list content just to make it better organized? And then now we can come back over here. And so we have our transformed or session list content. So we're going to do for each transform child in session list content. We're going to do child.gameObject.destroy. No, we have to do destroy dot no, child dot game object, like so, because we don't want to be creating duplicates on our list. So I mean, I could even put a comment here. Clears our session list UI so we don't create duplicates. All right, now what we're gonna do is for each session info, session in, is that what we called it? Session? You're so smart, IntelliSense. Just double checking here. Is that what we called it? Oh, and we should probably move this, even though we won't see it in the inspector. Let's go ahead and put this under our head. Sorry, I stepped away again. All right, so we have our list. Okay, so we're down here in for each session info session in sessions. So if session dot is visible, because we're not going to create a session entry if the session's not even visible. So what we need now is we need a public game object, session entry prefab. And so now we're going to create game object entry equals game object dot instantiate session entry prefab. And we want to make it a child. If we put comma, we can set what we want its parent to be, and it's going to be, what do we call that? Session list content. And we don't need to put dot transform because we already made it a transform, didn't we? Yeah. Why is it suggesting that? That's silly. All right. So we have our entry. We've created it. So now we need to get the session list content script that's on the entry. So now we have session entry prefab. Boy, can't type. Script equals entry dot get component session entry prefab. And now we can do script dot session. Didn't we make those public? Oh, I called it room name. Why did I do that? Let's call it session name. Let's use the correct vernacular. I mean, if you left it as room name, that's fine. All right. So script dot session name dot text. Okay, so this is the TextMesh Pro component. This is setting the text on it. Equals from our session info entry. No. From our session info session dot, we want the name. All right. And then we want our script dot player count dot text equals session dot player count plus a slash plus session dot max players. Now we have our player count dot text. Now, if our session dot is open is false, or session dot player count is greater than or equal to session dot max players. So what we're doing here is we're checking to see if the room is open or if we've already filled all the player slots. If it's not open and we've already filled all the player slots, we don't want our button to be clickable to actually join the session. So now we do script dot button, join button dot interactable equals false. And just to be safe, in case we left it not interactable, we're just going to do an else statement, script dot join button dot interactable is true. Because if neither one of those things is true, then we want to go ahead and make sure it's interactable. I could be wrong, but I think our session list is done. But now we have to actually be able to create a session. So let's create a method to do that. We already have something. We have connect to session. And then we feed it a session name. Let's do a connect to session where we don't know the session name because we're creating the room and we're just going to generate a random name. So I'm going to do a public async void connect to session with no parameters. And then we're going to steal all these. And then let's see if I can remember this next line off the top of my head because I always have to look it up. So we're going to have an int, random int, equals, but of course we haven't until since 2022 and it's just going to remember it all for me. All right, I didn't get to remember it. So I like to put it between 1,000 and 999. And then random is wanting to know, it's probably got an ambiguous reference or something. I want to use Unity engine.random rather than the system.random. And now we're going to say that string random session name equals room hyphen plus random int dot toString. I probably don't even need to put dot toString. Maybe I do. And then down here, this is going to be our random session name. You know, there's no reason for us to call this connect to session. Let's do create session. Now let's see if any of this worked. First off, let's make sure that all of our values are populated where they should be. Oh, and then we also need to tell our roomless canvas to activate. I don't know if we've done that. And I got to put my name entry canvas back on. It's so funny. I call this series Fusion Bytes because I'm like, I could take each one of these topics in like 15 minutes, but we're already over 30 minutes on this. I can't believe it. All right, name entry canvas. Turn that back on. Roomless canvas. I'm going to go ahead and turn off. But we don't have any logic on that. So let's come over here. And we're looking at our Fusion connection. Something's wrong. We lost our header. Yeah, why is our header gone? What the heck happened? Okay, so confused. But I don't know why the header's not showing up. Let's come over here and let's grab our session entry prefab and drop it in there. I'm gonna look at my console. I don't have any console errors. And we don't have the roomless canvas, so we need to add that. So let's come over here. Public game object, roomless canvas. And when are we activating that? On connect to lobby. We can do it right here, maybe. So let's do it at the beginning, just cause. All right, and so now room list canvas dot set active true. Okay, so we come back over here. Sorry, I had to step away again. I forgot where we were, but I know we got to put our roomless canvas here in the roomless canvas field. And if I come back over here, when we tell it to connect to lobby, we're setting it active. And did we tell our create button to do anything? Oh, I have to unlock this thing. Did we tell our create button to do anything? We did not. So let's go like that. Put our create button over here. And we want this to... Did I drag it? I dragged the create button into itself. We want to drag the Fusion Manager here. And Fusion Connection. We want to create session. All right, so I'm going to do a build test and see how this goes. I think we did everything. All right, let's see if this works. We're going to come over here, and we're going to try to join. We don't have anything in our room. Probably would be nice if I had a title there. And I'm going to create a room. Oh, no! But we didn't disable the view or disable the session list when I created a room. Also, I can't remember if the refresh works or not. You know what? I'm going to reopen this. All right, so I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to come over here and log in. All right, so there's our list. Oh, we have a null object reference exception on the refresh button. Oh, well, let's fix that. So I told it to, on this refresh button, do this business, but I didn't actually get the button component. So refresh button, just for fun, if refresh button is null, then refresh button equals get component button. There we go. Let's do a new build. Wait, before doing a new build, let's do on, because we know the room list canvas. So on connect to session. So on connect to session, we're going to do room list canvas dot set active false. And I'm just going to copy that down to our create session. Same thing. All right. Cool. All right, now I'm going to do a new build. All right, I'm getting them both running here. Go ahead and log into this one over here. And come over here and log into this one. So here, both of them, there's no rooms. So if I create a room, I now have a room. So hopefully if I refresh this list, is this, okay, there we go. Nothing's happening. You guys have probably been screaming at me this whole time. Didn't finish the refresh button script. Oh my goodness. So let's finish this refresh button script. So we're going to set the refresh button interactable to false. And then what we're going to do is we are going to do our fusion connection dot instance dot, I don't remember what we called it. Refresh session list UI. Refresh session list UI. And then we don't need this anymore because I'm going to do yield return wait for yield return new wait for seconds. And I don't know, let's say 3. And that's just so oh, and then after that, we're going to set our refresh button interactable again. So refresh button dot interactable equals true. Okay, so now let's do another build and run. All right, again, I forgot where we left off. I had to step out, take care of some kids, but they're both in. Let's create a room over here. Good, the panel went away. So let's come over here and let's refresh the list. Hey, and there we got it. There we have the room, although it says 1 out of 4. Could have sworn we set the max players to 2. We also have a null object reference on 74. Oh, for some reason it didn't have the, something with the room name is null. Because that's 1942 is just what I had in there as a placeholder. Our session name, oh, I renamed it. That's why. So here I am back in the session entry prefab. Put the room name over here. Let's go ahead and get consistency session name. There we go. And so now if I do a build and run, we should be good. But real quick, I'm going to check and figure out why it was showing max players of 4. Because for our session list, on connecting to a session, when we know the session name, oh, we were trying to set the player count, but when we know the session name, that means we're joining. So this, it can't really do anything. Oops, I paused myself. Can't really do anything with that anyway. So if we delete that, when we create the session, we're setting the player count to 2. It's also possible that our logic of actually showing the UI stopped whenever it couldn't find the session name. So I'm just going to do another build and run real quick. All right, so we're back. Let's create a room over here. Let's refresh the room list. There it is. Yeah, that's what it was. So now we see 1 out of 2. And let's go ahead and join the room. And there we can see we have both of our players. So that's how you handle a lobby for the most part. Now, there are some other things that you might need to sort out, like setting custom room properties. We're not going to do that right now. Maybe we do it in a future bite if you can't figure it out on your own. Like, comment below if you want me to cover that. And Another thing would be like closing a room or creating private rooms. We'll definitely do private rooms because that was a request someone made on how we can do passwords. So we'll tackle that in the next bite. If you'd like to support the channel, like, comment, subscribe. You can become a YouTube member or go to patreon.com/PhilipHurlitz and you get nice little perks if you become a YouTube member or join the Patreon. And we'll see you next time.